from the 23rd Psalm. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binoteh sheyarbitzeini, al mei menuchot, ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, ישובב, ינחני במגלי צדק, ינחני במגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא אחסר.
The Chazan, the sweet singer of Israel, has shared with us, by way of the sound of his soul and his voice, the feelings of our hearts at this moment. We listen to the voice of the psalmist as he now continues to bring us the message of God's nearness, of our fellowship with God, both in light and in darkness, in joy and in sorrow, in life, and yes, even in death. Ana elech meruchecha, ana mipanecha evrach. Imechsak shamayim shamata ve'atzia sheol hinecha. Whither shall I go from your spirit, or whither shall I flee from your presence? If I were to ascend up into heaven, you are there. If I were to make my bed in the netherworld, behold, you are there. If I were to take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there would your hand lead me, and your right hand would hold me. And if I were to say, surely the darkness shall envelop me, and the light about me shall be as night, well, even the darkness is not too dark for you. But the night it shines as the day, the darkness is even as the light. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. And see if there be any way in me that is grievous. And then lead me in the way everlasting. Death has called our beloved Stan Bruskin. The ancient sage has taught us about death that the human spirit is the lamp of the Lord. Not even the darkness of death can extinguish God's light. which has been kindled in the sanctuary of the human soul. Therefore, O God, we thank you now in this very solemn moment for that which was deathless and stands life, and which is now revealed to us in all of its beauty. For his love that united us in life and which death can never sever. For his companionship, which we shared along life's path, and which still continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind, which brought us joy and laughter and smiles and happiness, and now have become a precious heritage of the Spirit. For all these and more, we give you our thanks. Grant unto us, O God, the strength of all the generations of our people, who in the face of bereavement were able to proclaim as we do now, Adonai Natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. It's my honor now to call upon members of Stan's family to share with us some words of reflection and moments of sharing in life with him.
Although I'm here with a heavy heart, I'm also here to celebrate the fact that I had so many wonderful years with my father. Today is not just a celebration of life, it's a celebration of a life well lived. As you know, there was nothing that my father liked more than a celebration. Any party he went to, he took it upon himself to make a speech that playfully commemorated the guest of honor. In that vein, I think that's just what Art, Sydney, and I are here to do today. It's almost impossible to speak about my father without also mentioning his relationship with my mother. They're definitely the epitome of opposites attracting. My mother was studious and reserved and grew up in a home that stressed academics and conventionality. My father, on the other hand, wasn't. During my mother's freshman year at Douglas College, much to the horror of Sam and Fanny Shaken, she was set up on a blind date with a kid from New Brunswick who, by the way, didn't even go to Rutgers. The blind date was such a success that 1 or 2 dates later, my dad thought it would be a good idea to take Fanny and Sam's daughter on a car ride to Passion Puddle. Now, while most couples were at this romantic spot on the Douglas campus to watch submarine races, my father seemed to have other ideas. Instead of parking, he put on his New Brunswick High School band hat, which closely resembled a New Brunswick policeman's cap, and proceeded to shine the brightest flashlight he could find into the windows of parked cars, shouting, "Move along," while my mother was seated next to him in the front seat. Once their relationship was established, my dad never wanted to be apart from my mom, including during summer breaks from college when she left New Brunswick and vacationed in Asbury Park with her family. He did make one attempt their first summer as a couple and took a job as a camp counselor at Will Rothstein's Pine Grove Sleepaway Camp in Jamesburg, which was actually where the Greenbrier community, where they live now, is located now. His first night there, just as his campers were falling asleep, he decided it would be a good idea to sneak out, get in his car, and drive down to Asbury just to spend a few hours with her. Upon returning to camp at 1 a.m, my dad walked into his cabin only to find a flashlight shining in his face. Addressing his junior counselor, he said, "Hey, Morty, put that light down. Uncle Will's gonna see us." To which he received the reply, "Bruskin, this is Uncle Will, and you're fired." All this was not for nothing, as my parents did end up getting married and would have been celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary this June. My father's ability to see the silver lining in everything was a quality I always admired. Take my parents' honeymoon, for example. It was every newlywed's dream to honeymoon at the Fontainebleau in Miami Beach, the biggest, swankiest hotel at the time. But my father, being my father, instead of actually staying at the Fontainebleau, he booked the much more, shall we say, quaint motel next door. Every morning when he opened the blinds, he announced to his bride, "See how lucky we are? We get to look at the big, beautiful Fontainebleau, and their guests have to look at us." There was rarely a situation he got himself into that he didn't make the best of. My mother was not the only focus of his loyalty. He also was very committed to his job at Revlon. He went from working in customer service in Edison to becoming an executive in New York. Revlon, at the time, was one of the most renowned cosmetic companies, and because of this, he was able to hobnob with the who's who of the Borscht Belt. When Henny Youngman was introduced to him as Stan Bruskin from Revlon, Henny was so happy because his wife Sadie's favorite Passionata pink nail polish had recently been discontinued by the company. He asked my father if he still had any, not knowing that my father essentially had a Revlon archive in his office desk. My dad arranged for Henny to come to his office to get it, and a lifelong friendship was formed. Around this time, he also began providing hair color to another comedian, Red Buttons, who always liked to say to my dad, "Stan, if it wasn't for you, I would be known as Gray Buttons." And of course, you can't mention my dad and loyalty without also mentioning Rutgers. Some of my earliest memories are going to football and basketball games with him, meeting the players and learning all of the fight songs and chants. Even though no one in our family, aside from my mother, actually went to Rutgers, we all adopted the school as our own. My father took his commitment to the Rutgers sports program very seriously and refused to leave any game early, regardless of whether, for example, the football team was losing 54-0, or if it was a blizzard or raining sideways. And even in those cases, he still went home and rewatched the entire game on his DVR. Ironically, what many of you may not know is that he actually grew up on Rutgers Street, which is only a few blocks from this temple. And I was just reminded that when he was living on Rutgers Street, he was known as Tootsie. That was his nickname. You would think an executive who traveled many weeks for his job and had to be present for every home RU football and basketball game, so much so that we had to plan all family events around the team's schedules, wouldn't have much time to get involved in the things that my brother and I were up to. But you would be wrong. Take, for instance, the time he volunteered to chaperone my third grade class trip to the Museum of Natural History in New York. I was so excited because this was really out of character for him. It was usually my mother's job. I realized early on that his chaperoning style was much different from hers because upon getting on the bus, he asked my classmates to put down all the windows so he could smoke his cigar. He then proceeded to teach us inappropriate camp songs, which he must have learned in the one day that he was a counselor, with the lyrics changed to reference school. One was to the tune of "I've been working on the railroad," and included the line, "Teacher, you're a jerk." I think this all may have been overlooked had he not approached the teacher at lunch and said, "Can you watch the kids for a little?" and then proceeded to walk across the street to McCann's bar with his best buddy, Herbie Hirsch, who was also on chaperoning duty that day. Let's just say the two of them were subsequently barred from ever again chaperoning in the Edison School District. My father spoiled me all of my life and couldn't do enough for me. When I decided I wanted to look at Tulane in New Orleans, he accompanied me on the next flight south. The first night there, we had a wonderful dinner, and my dad was even kind enough to enlist the son of one of his local Revlon distributors to be my French Quarter tour guide. It did come back to bite him, though, when Bourbon Street got the best of me that night, and I spent some time on our hotel room's bathroom floor. I'm happy to say that I was able to rally the next day when my dad had the idea to go to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, one of the most quintessential things that you can do in the Crescent City. I was so fortunate to have a dad who was not only cool enough to suggest going, but was also cool enough to forgive my antics from the night before. My father made my life exciting because his life was exciting. He showed me that you can find humor in just about any situation and spoiled me with his generosity. He also taught me that when it comes to Rutgers sports, there's always next year. I was honored, blessed, and lucky to have him in my life for so many years. Dad, you were the best, most fun, and most loving father anyone could ever hope for. I love you so much, and I promise to keep laughing if you will. It's a tough act to follow. Many people, most people, go through their lives without ever meeting a Stan Bruskin. But luckily for me, I not only got 31 years with him, but we also happen to share some pretty great DNA. My grandfather was one of the most special people and a man whose smile, joy, and laughter could truly light up any room. From him, I learned so many important lessons, such as don't take any wooden nickels, how to play blackjack properly, and how to gracefully lose a game, which also thank you to Rutgers Athletics for that lesson. But most importantly, he taught me how to love. The love he has for my grandmother is something so beautiful and so pure. He loved my mom so much, and I know how proud he was of her, and how happy he was to have my father as his son-in-law, but more like son. And I know how much he loved me and my sister, and how happy he was when we all got to be together. And the world loved him right back. It was impossible not to. He made friends everywhere he went and was able to disarm even the most frosty types, such as car salespeople, telemarketers, the AOL customer support team, etc. He kept business cards from all of his favorite spots in every city and made sure to write down the name of whoever he met there so he would never forget them. Even when I moved to LA, which was about 4 years ago, one of the first things he asked me is if I had gone to Mateo's restaurant, which he had not been to since maybe 1980, and if I did, to make sure I asked for the owner and to see if his wife still was stocked up on Revlon. Most of all, he loved life. He truly lived every single moment to the fullest and brought all of the joy to even the dullest of moments. Life of the party does not even begin to cover it. If there was a bar bat mitzvah, a theme party, a backyard barbecue, a tailgater, really any gathering that was more than 3 people, he was there and he was living it up. I'll never forget being at my cousin's bat mitzvah and my grandfather rushed past us and he had in one hand a plate full of crab legs and in the other hand an Absolute on the rocks. And he was in such a hurry and we said, "Grandpa, what are you doing?" And he informed us that he was in a contest with an old friend to see who could both drink more Absolutes and eat more crab legs before cocktail hour ended. And please, could we let him get back to it because he was behind. It's very hard to boil down 93 years of such an amazing life into a short eulogy, but I do think if there's one phrase to describe my grandfather, it's lighting up a room. He was light in any situation and was always going to make sure that everyone around him was able to bask in the glow. It was his mission that everyone was having as good of a time and laughing just as hard as he was. Even in difficult times, you could count on him to put a smile on your face, be it with a joke, his laughter, or even just a hug and kiss on the cheek, too, in France. There's many things that I will take away from his life, but the most pertinent, especially today, is that you will always receive back the love that you give. And looking out into a room of all the people that loved him, I know that to be especially true. In Judaism, we say, may their memory be a blessing, and I really feel that sentiment closely through this whole process. Grandpa, knowing, loving, and being loved by you is one of the greatest joys of my life, and I will honor your spirit every day forward. I will never stop rooting for Rutgers. I will never stop finding the humor in life, and I will never let my light dim. I love you.
So when my mother-in-law asked me to say a few words about my father-in-law, Stan, my friend, my mentor, I said, where do I sign up? This is indeed a sad occasion, and Bobby and our whole extended family are deeply grateful to all of those who could be here today, all of you, and those who couldn't be here, but who shared their deepest sympathies with us. Sydney, Shelby, Greg, Patty, Michael, Jacob, Joe, all have been especially helpful during this time, and all the neighbors who stopped by and called and gave their wishes. Thank you to everyone. We're especially honored today to have Rabbi Miller perform the service, who came out of retirement especially for Stan's funeral. Thank you, Rabbi. But this is Stan Bruskin, and we can't be sad very long. After all, if he was here today, he'd be the one handing out the X-rated calling cards, telling Henny Youngum jokes off a tape measure they carried around in his pocket. He'd be wearing a silly hat or a costume. He'd be handing out business cards with the phone number of Buckingham Palace on it instead of his own. That Queen never got over that one. And Dewey magic tricks involving a fake thumb, ketchup, and a lot of mess to clean up afterwards. Stan's life was so filled with joy and happiness, it would be a shame not to remember him for who he was. A man who lit up every room he walked into, someone who could turn a dull party into an all-night rager, and a man who loved his wife and family dearly, a man who preferred SpaghettiOs to the finest cuisine, and a man who loved canned fruit over the fresh stuff. If you sat down with Stan for a drink at his house, you soon had a baked clam in your hand, followed by mussels marinara and a frozen appetizer du jour that he picked up at Costco. Whether you wanted it or not, you got it. Costco mussels are good, he'd said, but the ones at Sam's Club, that's really the ones you got to get. So there was Stan making special trips down to Sam's Club to buy frozen mussels so his friends could have them at a cocktail party, at his happy hours. I first remember Stan when I started dating Sue back in 1984. Stan was fully engaged in his career at Revlon at the time and was traveling around the country on business a lot. And on days that he wasn't traveling, he was commuting to New York. And I remember on Friday nights, Stan would come home around 7 o'clock from a long week at work. He would kiss Bobby hello, big kiss to Bobby, hand over a stack of fashion magazines that he got for Sue, that he got through Revlon, change out of his suit, and then walk over to this big armoire in their living room, kind of with lots of doors and, cabinets and things like that. And he would lower one of the cabinets down, and a light would go on, and that was the bar. All the bottles were in there, the gin, the vodka, scotch. And then he would rub his hands together and say, how about a little Vorspite, which I understand to be a little cocktail, a little drink, a little food before we go out to dinner. And I remember thinking, boy, I really could get to like this family. And the rest is history, obviously. But at that point, from that point on, the weekend didn't start until Stan announced that happy hour had begun. I mentioned Revlon, where Stan worked for 35 years. Stan would often tell stories about how hard it was to work there and how difficult Revlon's founder, Charles Revson, was to work for. So finally he gave up trying to explain it to me, and he gave me a book entitled Fire and Ice. And it was a book about Charles Revson and his founding of Revlon. Well, I didn't even make it through 100 pages to realize what a really difficult place it was to work there, to work. Now I know why companies have HR departments, have sexual harassment training, have labor unions. And I stopped reading because, quite frankly, I wasn't worthy of someone trying to go through that experience. It just wasn't, I couldn't have done it. But there was Stan, a man totally dedicated to the well-being of his family, who not only survived that environment, but thrived in it. Not as one of the bad guys, but certainly as one of the good guys. And it's a different world today, thank goodness, but he took that work experience and helped me navigate my own career, spending hours with me on the phone talking about how to deal with crazy bosses, impossible sales quotas, and difficult clients. So I thank you, Stan, very much for that help. Can't go without talking about Rutgers. And I'll talk about one aspect of Rutgers that's just tremendous, and Audrey and Jeff are here, but the seats that the family have at football games and basketball games are really quite spectacular, and Bobby and Stan enjoyed many, many games along with Richard and Dottie and everyone else. His football tickets are great, but his basketball tickets are unbelievable. Okay, they're the first row. And I was just talking to Bobby the other day, and she was recounting how many times a basketball or even a player ended up in her lap. And when you sit down there, you're next to dignitaries, you're sitting next to governors. At least I've met 2 governors while sitting down there. NBA players, NFL players, and the top brass at Rutgers will all be down at that level. And I even got a high five when I was sitting there from Todd Frazier, who's a Rutgers grad and a Yankees and a Mets alumni, whatever. And you got to know the ushers, and one time I was even invited to sit on the floor. We were right, and the game is a different perspective down there. Not that Rutgers won anymore when you're sitting down there, but you certainly got the idea about how tall and how big and how fast they were. And with the best seats came the best parking spots also, which is, since we're a big tailgate family, that was a huge deal at the football games. And I remember, he had front row at the football parking lot, scarlet lot, top tailgating spot in the whole Rutgers complex. And just this past October, our now Governor Mikey Sherrill, but then Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, came by because she was campaigning at the Rutgers tailgates. Good idea, I think. And I remember calling her over and said, Congresswoman, would you like to meet the oldest Rutgers fan, around? And she's like, sure. I said, he's 93. And they're standing in the parking lot with a Bloody Mary in one hand, a Jersey Mike sub in the other hand, meeting the now governor. And I remember her saying, like, 93? What, does Rutgers have the Fountain of Youth around here? So I just want to tell you another thing about Stan and Bobby. And Stan, they're just some of the most generous people you could know. And just one aspect of that is that they used to take us on many cruises. I think they've been on over 25 cruises, I'm sure, and we were probably on 12 of them with them. I think Shelby went to, I think by the time she was 8, she had gone on 8 cruises. So we had gone all the places, Caribbean islands, Mexico, all in the southern seas. And Stan, like a typical cruiser, would spend his days eating in the various restaurants and all night in a casino. Pretty typical on any cruise, but Stan was not a normal cruiser because Stan had figured out a way to beat the cruise line at their own game. He never paid for one drink. When the cruise line offered him a free glass of champagne, he got Absolute out of it. And even though we had lobster tails every night, even though the menu called for chicken. If they were serving 8-ounce steaks, we got 16-ounce steaks. We had filet mignon, caviar, lobster, all off-menu items. He just knew how to work the system. At the ports, he was even better. He got deep discounts on just about everything, bottles of alcohol, jewelry, watches, you name it. He would take a price from the ship and go to the guy on land and say, look, they're $8.99 for Absolute. Oh, okay, I'll honor it. But the last cruise we were on, they were invited to a captain's party, of course, with free drinks. And Stan and Bobby were there, and they won a contest because they were the ones that were married the longest on the ship. And I think it was 67 or 68 years. And the prize was to win a free dinner for 2 at one of the upscale restaurants on the ship. And sure enough, Stan was able to parlay that 2 free into 6 free, including Chateaubriand and wine and flaming dessert and the whole thing. So I think at the end of the day, the cruise line put his name on a list of people, beware of cruiser. He figured our system out. There's so many other generosity stories I won't share with you right now because of time, but I'll never forget what he had said to me in the hospital. One of the last things he said to me, and some of the Rutgers fans will appreciate this, he said, Rutgers won the championship. I said, what? Rutgers won the championship. He said it again. And I was obviously confused, as many of you might be, because as anyone from New Jersey and pretty much everywhere knows, Rutgers has never won a championship in any one of the sports that Stan followed or any other sport. Footnote, they won something fencing in 1949. And I left the hospital thinking about what he said. Rutgers won the championship. And I thought, and it finally came to me. Rutgers had indeed won the championship, not by winning on the field or on the court, but because they had Stan as their biggest fan. I miss you, Stan. I love you. Thank you.
Permit me to reflect as I share the words of this poem, whose author is unknown. It is entitled, my cameos of memory. We just heard them all. These are my treasure, kept apart, cradled in velvet in my heart. Graven profiles picture clear, perfect moments, priceless, dear, etched in ageless time to be my cameos of memory. The hours I have spent with you, the tender times, the fun times too, the summer roses and the rain, the laughter and the precious pain of my loving you, your loving me, my cameos of memory. These are the wealth, my warmth, my light. I keep them dream close all the night. With fingertips of heart and mind, I trace each profile there defined. These treasures none can take from me, my cameos of memory. Not far from here, as we heard Sue tell us, Stan Bruskin was born at St. Peter's Hospital, and not far from here, just a few blocks away, Stan lived with his parents, Bess and Ted, and brothers Richard and Marvin, on, of course, Rutgers Street. And just around the corner, Stan attended school, and here in this very sanctuary, Stan celebrated his bar mitzvah. It's fair to say that Stan was a New Brunswick man through and through, with a love for this town, the lifelong friends he made in this town, the loyal and steady fan of Rutgers that he celebrated throughout his life, and so much more. Centered here and throughout this area where he was raised, lived, worked, played, and loved life every day that the gift of life was given to him. This morning, you and I are gathered here to be together with Bobby and Sue and Art, Shelby and Sydney, Greg and Patty, and their entire family. Our privilege is to comfort each and every one of them as they begin to learn to live life without the powerful presence of Stan being among them each and every day. For them, that will be no easy task, but I know, Bobby, that you are up to it. For 75 years, you and Stan celebrated life together, married during 69 of those precious years. For so many years and days and nights, the two of you shared life and all its fullness with Sue and Art and Scott of blessed memory, and then with Shelby and Sydney. As I prepared my words for this morning, I heard Stan speaking to me in my ear. Rabbi, don't speak of my death. Don't be maudlin. Don't be sad. That's not what my life was about. I loved life and I lived it every day. I was very lucky to have Bobby with me. Together we made a wonderful life, she at my side and I at hers. I was the playmaker of our team, the quarterback who threw the passes, who handed off the ball, but Bobby was the brains. Rabbi, that's what I want you to tell them. And of course, as I heard those words, I could see this huge smile on his face, the smile that was always on his face, that Stan Bruskin smile. It's true, Stan lived every day of his 92 plus years. He never missed a moment to celebrate. The Rutgers games, the card games, the family gatherings, the parties that he loved, the travel that he shared with Bobby, and then with his kids and with his granddaughters too. And he never missed a moment to be with Scott. He taught Scott his love for sports, and Scott came to share it with Stan. Scott was Stan's star that shined brightly until the day that Scott's light of life was out. And when Scott died, Bobby, you stepped up. You and Stan held each other in a loving embrace that would last forever. And then the two of you made sure that Scott's light would never be extinguished. Together, you both found the way to continue to live and to do so with meaning, with generosity, and with love. And because of you, Scott's shining light touched so many and enabled so many to become shining lights themselves. Stan believed that in life you work hard and you play hard. That's the way you play the game of life, and if you play it with everything you got, you win. Stan understood this, and that's how he played each quarter, the first and the second half, every game. And we all know he was a winner. For only a brief moment, in the final second of the game, he knew that there were no more shots to make, no passes to throw, and no scores to be made. Stan worked hard and worked his way up, as we heard, at Revlon. Along the way, he not only did business, but he also made friends. Friends all over the world. His friends were in every city and town where he worked. He made friends at the restaurants where he ate. He made friends with the airline personnel on his flights and wherever he went. And as we heard, even Henny Youngman became his friend. If you want to know even more about that story and Henny's appearance at Sue and Art's wedding, just ask the family. It's part of the family lore. Stan played hard. He was a guy's guy. He loved the poker game, the basketball game, the football game. He loved being courtside. And he always had family at his side, Bobby most of the time, Scott, Sue, Sydney, Shelby, or Art. And he played at what Bobby loved too. He joined you for concerts, theater, symphony, and as you told me, he considers doing so to be among the best moments of sleep that he could ever have. But he was at your side, always, and you at his side. He reminded you every day of how much he loved you, and every day he made you do as you're doing now. He made you smile and laugh with glee. And as you told me, he taught me how to make friends and how to be a friend. He did have some quirks. He had a limited sense of good food. Hot dogs on the grill, Chef Boyardee, SpaghettiOs, and he seldom arrived on time for a scheduled event, even his own wedding. But these were quirks that brought out the smile in him, as we heard, for they were not about principle or ideology. They were about the making the most out of life. Now, just the other night, 4 astronauts circled the moon as they celebrated the game of exploration of space and beyond. We all know of their circling the moon and many beautiful pictures of the moon that they shared with all of us. In Judaism, the moon plays a very important part in the story of life. We celebrate the moon each month. It has a role to play in every one of our holidays too. Our calendar is lunar. Shabbat ends when, along with the moon, there are 3 stars that can be seen in the sky. The moon is like life. It begins with a small streak of light, grows in brightness and in intensity, and then recedes from you. It remains among us only not to be seen, but with a sure sense that its light will once again appear. And so it is for life. Our lives begin with a small beating of the heart, a baby's first cry. As our life continues, it brings light and intensity by what we do, how we live, who we touch. And that is how it is until the light fades and disappears. However, the memory of it gives hope that such light will shine again, anew, and as bright as the stars that surround it. Like the moon, Stan Bruskin's light shone brightly for so long with intensity and joy and meaning. His daily light has now disappeared, come to an end, but not without the hope and the belief that it will return again and again. And how will Stan's light continue to shine? Through the memories of life that he created while he lived them. Stan's light will continue to shine when we hear the roar of the crowd after the ball sinks through the basket, after the team scores a touchdown, after we celebrate the win. Stan's light will continue to shine brightly when we see Bobby singing in the chorus, when we rejoice with Art and Sue at the accomplishments of Sydney and Shelby. And Stan's light will continue to shine brightly each time we recall a moment shared with him, a moment that serves now as a cameo of his light, his love, his profound sense of rejoicing through life each and every day. Yes, those are Stan's cameos of memory. And this you and I know. Stan's moment, his life, his memory, will be a blessing to all who were privileged to join him in the game of life, at his side, on his team, with joy every step of the way. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May Stan's memory always and only be for blessing. And together we say, Amen. We enter now into a moment of personal, private reflection as we recall the many cameo moments of memory that Stan shared with us. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable before you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. We rise now for El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Mamromim, אמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. אם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת שלמה בן טוביה ופשע שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen.
O God, full of compassion, you who dwell on high, grant perfect rest now unto the soul of Stan Bruskin, who has departed from this world. God of mercy, bring him into your presence and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be for him a possession, and may his repose be everlasting peace. And together we say, Amen. Please be seated.